How many times have we heard people say, it's crazy at work? It seems that we've normalized a stressful workplace that's always on fire. We're at the end of 2023 and I'd like 2024 to be much better for work. But for a better 2024, we must first revisit 2001, especially the term agile. Agile is an overloaded term these days, but its use in the workplace traces its history back to the famous 2001 gathering at the Snowbird ski resort in Utah. That was the origin of the Agile manifesto. But the 17 luminaries at Snowbird didn't start with the term agile. In fact, the term that preceded agile was lightweight. Indeed, Uncle Bob Martin's call to action asked all lightweight method leaders to get in one room. Alistair Cockburn had a different perspective, though. He didn't want people to call him a lightweight attending a lightweight methodologists meeting. I can see his point. One thing led to another, and lightweight gave way to the term agile. It helps, though, to remember the lightweight sentiment that brought the agile community together. If you pull out the dictionary, you'll notice that being agile refers to the ability to change and adapt quickly and easily. Jim Highsmith wrote that it was about delivering good products to customers and recognizing that people were the most important. What struck me was that Jim talked about a developer community freed from the baggage of Dilbertesque corporations. That was 2001. And here we are in 2023. It turns out that the Dilbertesque nature of our corporations has managed to co-opt the agile movement. Not convinced? Let me tell you what our work looks like. My research and that of others tells us that we spend a third of our workdays in meetings. A third of those meetings are a waste of time. The cost of these wasted hours is approximately $13,000 per person per year. To put that in perspective, imagine yourself as an employee in India. Your employers could buy you a new car every year with that kind of cash. And of course, this has an impact on job satisfaction. Many factors impact job satisfaction, but there are two that are relevant to our conversation. Our ability to do deep work, that is, get stuck into a complex problem and work without interruptions. And second, getting into a state of flow when we do it, which is when we are so into work that we could go on and on with it. Knowledge workers have modest needs. All they ask for is 20 hours of deep work each week. They get just 11. And why? Because on average, every knowledge worker faces 18 interruptions a day. The cost of bad meetings and interruptions is colossal. $2 million for every 100 employees in a company. The usual suspects are your video conferencing and instant messaging tools. But why do we have so many meetings? There are many reasons, but one of them happens to be a misinterpretation of the Agile Manifesto. When you dive into the principles of the manifesto, you will find a line that says, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information in a team is face-to-face conversation. This line hasn't aged well. Let's be fair, between two people, real-time face-to-face communication is very effective. There's only one line of communication, right? What about bigger teams though? A 3-person team has 3 lines of communication. 4 people, 6 lines. 5 people, 10 lines. 6 people, 15 lines. The bigger the team, the more complex it is to communicate in real time. A 14-person team has 91 lines of paired communication. You either keep everyone in meetings all the time or play a game of telephone. Tribal communication is not just unscalable, it's also Dilbertesque. Let's go back to the notion of being lightweight. Agile methodologies advocate for lightweight requirements. User stories are a popular way of writing agile software requirements. The idea is simple. When you write lightweight requirements, you keep the design simple, your feedback loop is short, and if you go wrong, you're not off by much. But is the process of dealing with user stories simple? Well, no. Stories go through a heavyweight development cycle. In the standard Scrum process between sprint planning, stand-up meetings, sprint reviews, and retrospectives, you have about 5 hours of meetings per week already booked in. And that'd be okay if you didn't have a ton of other ceremonies. When you zoom in, you see that the humble user story goes through an average of 7 meetings before it creates value for a customer. As we've discussed, meetings are costly and they interrupt our flow. If you have a calendar full of meetings, it's also hard to work flexibly, which means certain people can't be part of your teams. I'll speak for myself. I didn't start my career with the ambition to sit in loads of meetings. Did you? So that's 2023. We can't be proud of the way we work, but can 2024 be less Dilbertesque? I have hope and 5 ideas. Let me share them with you now. First, free up time for the things that matter. If your calendar looks like this, you're doing work between meetings. That can't be right. Synchronize your team calendars so that you can free up one half of your day for deep work. All meetings can move to the second half of the day. Better still, make Fridays meeting free. That way you can end your week with a sense of accomplishment. Don't forget to sync personal calendars as well. If you have individual commitments at the time that you've set aside for deep work, all that calendar cleanup won't help. You'll also benefit from being pragmatic with meetings. Here's a simple 2x2 matrix for you to view your meetings from a fresh perspective. On the x-axis, you have conveyance on one side. An example would be one-way information transfer. On the other side, you have convergence. An example would be a workshop to make a high-stakes decision. The y-axis maps the strength of the relationship. The top half denotes a strong relationship, the bottom half a weak relationship. So which meetings do you need? To convey information to people you have strong relationships with, don't do meetings. Send a document instead. Easy peasy. If the relationship is weak, async is fine. But at the start, you can use a meeting to convey information. This can be a contrivance to build up the relationship. Quadrant 3 is always tricky. Default to a meeting if you're making a contentious decision with people you have a weak relationship with. Last but not the least, if your relationship is strong and you must converge on a decision, follow a hybrid approach. Collect all inputs asynchronously. Do everything you possibly can outside a meeting and then get together only for the final step. This framework, which I call the Converell quadrants, will keep you honest about your meeting culture. That's idea number 1. Idea number 2 is to calm down your team comms. Agile sought to fix the problem of technologists drowning in out-of-date and bulky documentation. A correction was necessary. However, in the era of distributed work, poor documentation discipline leads to the unintended consequence of too many meetings and instant messages. As early as 2006, Martin Fowler told us how important it is to focus on documentation in distributed teams. But what should you document? I have a mnemonic for you to remember the triggers to create lightweight documents in the flow of your work. It's the word deep. D for decisions. Each time you decide something, document it for everyone's benefit. E for events. Meetings, workshops, town halls, they're all events. By documenting these, you persist the outcomes and knowledge from these interactions. E for explanations. Instead of repeating explanations to different people, write them down or record them. Create once, share many times. P for proposals. Whenever you have an idea, document the thought process and the details of what you're proposing. Not only will it foster decision hygiene, but it will also build the collective memory of the team. So don't stress yourself out. Follow the deep discipline each day at work and build your project archaeology one step at a time. My third idea is to improve how you make decisions. More decisions equal greater progress, and collaboration isn't consensus. Too often, we get everyone in a team into a meeting for every decision. This is wasteful, chaotic, and inefficient. Reduce the blast radius of your decision-making processes. One way to do this is by subdividing your team into smaller pods. These pods should be no larger than 2 to 4 people, and they should be short-lived. You can organize them around feature or capability lines. People in a pod own the decisions related to the work they are doing. And of course, they document their decisions for everyone's benefit. I also recommend nominating a directly responsible individual for each pod. This person can be a de facto leader for that unit and play the tiebreaker when the group can't agree on a decision. 2 more ideas to go. Let's go to idea number 4. When designing your virtual workplace, make inclusion a primary concern. Let's continue with the example of decision making. In a team of just 2 people, conversations can be very effective. But the moment your team gets any bigger, it's the Captain America type personalities that dominate the conversation. He's the captain, so he's senior. He fought the Germans and Thanos, so he has experience. He is worthy, so people look up to him. And hey, he's Captain America, so he speaks fluently. It's natural for most people to defer to a person like him. You get my point, right? In distributed teams, you must level the playing field for all kinds of people. Writing slows things down and makes communication inclusive, regardless of seniority, experience, and fluency with English. Follow the VUCA approach to any complex communication. Step 1, write things down in whatever detail possible. Step 2, share the idea with enough time for others to read and understand it. Step 3, this is when people drop notes, comments, and suggestions into the document. You can use this feedback to refine your idea as well. Step 4, if there are open items that need real-time discussion, meet by all means. If you get good at being async first, you may be able to close things out without a meeting. The great thing about this process is that it's iterative. You can build on old ideas, and you can create your team's knowledge base in the flow of your work. Which brings me to my last idea. Build resilient teams. In distributed teams, team knowledge shouldn't stay locked in people's heads. If these people fall sick, or leave, or have to handle an emergency, that leads to confusion on the team. Instead, maintain a team handbook for the collective knowledge of your team. For example, this is the landing page for one of my team's handbooks. If anyone knows something on a distributed team, everyone else must know it too. I suggest that you optimize for this state relentlessly. And there you have it, my 5 ideas to be less Dilbertesque. To explore these ideas in depth, check out my website, async-agile.org. I also suggest that you pick up my book, The Async-First Playbook, so you can find async-first alternatives to your team's existing practices. With some effort, 2024 could be the year where you upgrade the way you collaborate.